Hello, Tony here from Lightwave Digital. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to model a thermal detonator from Star Wars. So here's the model I've already made, and it's quite basic, and that's the way I like it. But what I'll do is, so the tutorial is basically going to be me just going through how I've modelled it in the simplest way. But what I've also done is I've got the final model I've just put in, textured it, and what I'll do is I'll briefly go through this, but give you this scene so you can see how I've done it as well. So not so much about the render, more about how to model it, but I will go through how I did this. So going back into model it, let's start a new scene and get cracking. So I've got my blank scene now. Another thing I did is I went and grabbed the clip from YouTube.
The mighty Jabba asks why he must pay 50,000.
Just so I can have a bit more reference. This one's quite chromy and shiny compared to mine, which I did do originally, but and then when I actually dulled it down a bit and made it a bit more rougher, I preferred my version, so I kind of went with that. But you can easily make it chromy. So first thing I did is I got a load of reference images from the internet, very random. I also went and got this one here, which shows you the front, back and side. And again, this is textures in a different colour even. And then I had a look at how other people have kind of textured it. I quite like this one by Brazil or whatever his name is. And so I used kind of that as a reference. So the first thing I did is I set my actual viewports up. So I've got a front, left and right and a perspective view. And then I'm going to put in some images as references. So what I did is I made a front, a left and a right. There was also a top which you can use later. And then what I do is I drag and drop it into your actual modeler window, and what that will do is it will add it for you, so they're here. So you don't have to actually go file import, you can drag and drop your images in, which is cool. So next is what I want to do is I want to put those reference images in each one of these windows. So to add the actual reference images, we just go to Edit, Backdrop Options, and so here, look, from the top left here, let's load in the front. As you can see, now it's currently 1 meter in height, so I want to make it similar. I want to make my actual detonator so it kind of fits in the palm of the hand. So let's say, how big shall I make? I'm going to make this, let's make it 150 millimeters. For the time being, and then let's do the same with the others. So let's just add 150 mil, and then oops, wrong one. 150 mil, like so. Then let's add. Let's leave this open. Because it's quite small. Let's add an object. So we've got to create ball numerical. So what I've done when numerical comes up is I've made the sides 34, segments 24. So we're adding a few more polygons, and then I've made the radius 60 mil, 60 mil, 60 mil. So from the center of the ball going out, it's 60 mil. So overall we'd look at about 12 centimeters, so that should be all right fitting in the palm of your hand. I probably should have looked what size it actually is, but you can do that if you want, and you can actually put the size in like this. So let's say I'm happy with that, so spacebar, and then I'll press A, and what this does, it brings up and it shows you how whereabouts it is in the reference. So this, what you can do now is you can go back, and where it says vertical offset and horizontal offset, you can then move this about and kind of put it into the place you kind of want it to be, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to quickly go and do that for each one of these, so it's lined up so they're actually in the middle by just using and moving around the actual parts of it, like so. So if I just quickly, and again I'm only doing this for it's just for reference really, like so. Okay, so we're set up. So we've got like a rough reference now of where the areas are. So the first thing I want to do is switch to polygons at the bottom here, look, and let's zoom in. So what I want to do is let's select all the polygons in the center here, look, like so. Because of this part, I want to choose which segments are going to be the center bit. That's kind of the inside. So before I do that, we could add a few more lines of edges. So to do that, we go to the detail tab, edges. We'll zoom in a little bit. So I'm zooming in using my middle roller wheel mouse button. And with the edit edges, it lets you move the edges or add edges. So when I hover over here, look, and here, with the left mouse button, it will let you move it, like so. But if you right mouse click, it will add a row. So I've added a new row here. I could say, okay, I want this to be here, and then right mouse click and add another row here. So we've added a few more in places. Now I know there could be a few more going around the other side as well, because you can add them going down like so, but I don't really want to start adding lots to this, because I'm just going to use it. I'm going to use it as a guide. It's not going to be like spot on. I just want it as reference. So let's say I was happy with that, and then let's select all the actual polygons in these 4 rows like so. Okay, then I'm going to Control and X to cut it, go to layers, and then under layers let's put it on a new layer and Control V. So we've got it in a background like so. Okay, so now what I can do is I can put this in the background as well, and we can decide which other ones. Let's say this, let's say this. Now when I'm doing this, obviously it's picking the front and the back, which I'm not too fussed about. It's, like I said, it's only for reference. So let's say that and that. So I could say all those there I want to be part of the, I want to cut and paste again. So let's just cut them, go into layer 1 and paste them, and then / to drop it. Now because I've cut and pasted them, these polys are separate from the rest. So what I mean by that is if I select one poly and press the square bracket key on my keyboard, it selects them all apart from the ones that I've cut and pasted. So what you need to do is go to Detail tab, Merge Points, press OK, and it's merged those 43 points. So now when I choose them all, it lets them do it. So let's put the other bit in the background, and you can see now it's in the background like so. So what I'm going to do is we're going to give some depth to this by giving it some thickness. So go to the Multiply tab, Thicken tool, press numerical. Let's make it 2.5 millimeters, and we'll have 2 segments like so. I think that'll do. Let's have a look. So we'll drop the tool, put the background on, and we should have this indent then. So we've got the indent going round. So where is the front, where is the back? Let's have a look. So if I choose some, and you can see here in this bottom corner, the one above the light. So let's deselect that, and what we've got is we know that now, let's say this is the front, let's say. Okay, so we know now in this area here. So if I was to select this in this bit here, in fact with this bit selected, let's press Q on a keyboard and let's just call it inner wall. I don't know what it's called, and then we'll give it another name, another surface, and smooth it just so it's a different colour like so. So into this we need to add the 3 lights here, which we're simply just going to use spheres. Then we need to add the bigger red light, and then we're on to the actual little button at the top that I'm guessing turns it on. So to add the little lights in the middle bit here, so let's just bring our layers. We only really need, let's do it like this. So as you can see, this is roughly where I'm saying they're going to go in the front here. So let's start by using a disc. We'll use a disc to go into that area there, look, like you can see. So disc, let's zoom in a bit, and we'll draw out a disc, and we'll put it roughly over where we think these are kind of going. And you can bring up the numerical here if you want. Let's make it roughly that. Or we could do, let's do 6. Bit bigger. Let's say that, and then in this left view look, let's just extrude it a little bit like this. Now, why it's live with these little orange handles, what I don't want to do is go on each different layers and start adding other bits. So why it's live, if you right mouse click, it's like a shortcut to duplicate, sorry, and then we'll right mouse click again, and then what we've got is another one like so. Okay, so let's shut this down, spacebar, and then we've got our actual little bits here. So let's just go to the move tool. So under modify, move or T, I'm going to hold control down so it's going to lock it, so when I bring it forward it's going to keep it only moving in one direction. And then I'm going to bring it so it's going through roughly like this. So rather than boolean them, because I'm going to stencil, what's called stencil, these shapes into this actual background image. But what I want to do first is I just want to rotate the 2 outer ones so they're actually not straight forward. So what we'll do is make sure you're on polygons, select one polygon, and then under selections you've got connected, or there's this little bracket key, the shortcut look, which selects it all. And then what we can do is, for this one, we're going to switch to the top view here. Look, so it says front. We'll go to top. We'll just center it. So let's just zoom in a little bit on here, and I'm just going to rotate. So modify, rotate, and I'm just going to rotate it in the center. Look, just so it goes out a little bit, and then bring it in. So it's kind of, it don't really matter, long as I've got this tube going through the background, so I can stencil it. It's fine. So / to drop it. Let's just choose a few polygons, and again the bracket key, and let me just rotate this again and then move it. So we've got something like this. Okay, so there's where I want my actual lights to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the move. I'm just going to bring them up a little bit in the side view, like so. I know they're not exactly on the line there, however, if I just bring up my layers, I want them so they're roughly in the center of where that is. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the middle inner layer up, and we're going to put the 3 shapes in the background. So what we do here is we're going to stencil the overlapping disc. So to do that, we're to construct, solid drill, we're going to stencil, and we want to stencil into the default original, well actually we're not default, we're defaulting into the, sorry, you need to select the surface you're going to stencil into, and in this case I've already surfaced this middle bit as inner ball. So we're stenciling into the inner ball, and we press OK, and then you'll see this little line. So let's have a look. What we've got is this. Okay, so what we can do is we can then, let's zoom in. I don't want these polys to be all, so there's 6 polys there. I don't want that, I just want 1. So select them all, under construct, just click dissolve, and do the same with the other ones. So selecting all the polys, dissolve, all the polys, and then dissolve like that. So you've kind of got this. Then we're selecting them all, and we're just going to bevel them in slightly. So again, let's just click and bevel like so. So I only need to go so far, maybe there, and then what we'll do is click and bevel again a little bit more. So you've got 2 little bevels. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to bevel them backwards. So click, we're going to pull them backwards, and let's go to about, we don't go too far, let's go to about there. Now the other thing what we're going to do is, because it's struggling to see the shape of it, we really need something in the, to work in the center of this, so we've got some polygons there as well. So let's do that next. Okay, so let's just sort these end polys out. So you're not really going to see them because they're inside. So we could just simply let's go to multiply, more, make pole, and let's just use the move tool. I'm going to move them forward a little bit like this. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is switch to polygons options, and you should have them all selected. Hold down shift and then select all the polys that make up the side. Okay, now while you've selected these, so we're just going to make these the kind of inside lights. So we'll press Q and we'll call it 3 minus inner front lights. You can tell I'm not very good at naming layers. And we'll just make it white. Okay, like so. So we've got this like this. The next thing we're going to do is, let's just zoom in a little bit. I want you to switch to points. And I want you to select a couple of points, maybe 3 like this, of the front of the first one. Then go to select loop and then press P. And what this will do, it will make a poly like so. And I want you to do it on all 3 of the actual holes. So we'll, again, 1, 2, 3 along the same way. Loop, P. When you press P, if you don't see it, press spacebar a few times so you switch to polygons. Then press F to flip it because it's just facing the wrong way. And again, last one, spacebar to jump to the point. So if you don't know about this, pressing spacebar when no tools are selected, it jumps between the different elements. Loop, press P, and then what we've got is this. So let's just select each one like so, and then what we'll do is let's thicken them. So we'll go to thicken and we'll just thicken them in very slightly like that. Bring up the numerical, and we're going to create a new surface. We'll call it free front glass lights. Okay, like so. So now we've got the front bits of the actual lights as glass, and the inside is white for the lights kind of thing. So we've kind of got this. The other thing you could do is, if you go and if you wanted to, what we could do is we can select a couple of polys along this outside loop. So what I'm going to make these come out a little bit so they've got a bit more of a ridge to them. And each time I do this, I kind of change it a little bit. Just try and remember to keep looking at your reference image, which I can't say I've I did it the first time I had a go at this. And so we've got all 3, and then we can just bring them out a little bit. Try and maybe multi-shift, bring the numerical, make sure grouping's on, and then you can maybe bring them out a little bit like so. So it gives it me like a nice little ridge. Okay, base bar, and then we'll drop it. So let's have a look now. Let's bring up our layers, and we don't need these, so we can delete them. Just delete on the keyboard, and so we've got this now. Okay, so next bit. So we've got these ridges as well. So we've got the ridges to do, we've got the top bit to do, and the next bit is we've got the actual top light to do. So let's, while we're on top here, let's go to edit, backdrop, top left, and let's load in the top. We'll just line this up a little bit. Whoops. Okay. Like so. So we can kind of see roughly where the actual light is. But as you can see, because I've moved the 3 lights, it just needs to be centered with this center one. So again, new layer. We'll put the actual main body in the background, and we'll just use a disc again. Now when I'm using the disc, So let's just draw out roughly the size I want it to be. Again, maybe it's more oval, like so. Let's just say, to make it smoother, we could let's just add double the actual sides for this, like so. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move it up and kind of place it roughly where we feel it kind of needs to be. Now I'm going to not put it dead on because the actual lights, I want it to be more in line with this, so there maybe. And again, like before, in one of the side views, you're going to rotate it. Like so. And once you're happy with where you've actually placed it, what we'll do is, like you did before, is we're going to switch it round so we can stencil into it. Now, you could just boolean it if you wanted to. I mean, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick to what I did before. In fact, let's just turn everything on and let me have a look before we do this. So that's roughly where I'm saying it's going to go. Okay, let's just go with that. And again, construct, solid drill. This time it's going to be the default. I haven't given the actual main ball a name yet, so we'll go with default. And like before, we switch to polys, we select them, and then under construct it's dissolve. And so we're now ready to kind of just bevel this in a bit, pull it back, and then we'll just, for the centre light, we'll use a ball, a squished ball, which will look cool. Okay, so we'll select the main poly, we'll use the bevel tool, we'll bevel it in. So I'm holding control down, then I'm letting go, and then I'm right mouse clicking and I'm just pulling it down like so. It goes inside the other, as you'll notice, it goes inside the other polys, but we can delete them. Select a couple of edges, so with the edge tool or spacebar, hold shift. Let's see if we can loop this like so. Once you've looped it, go to chamfer, and then we'll just chamfer it a little bit like this, just to give a smoother opening, yeah. And then with these here, these polys which are inside, we'll just select them and press delete, so we've not got them. The next thing we're going to do is, I don't need that, so let's delete it. We'll bring the actual outer shell in the background, and then I'm just going to use, let's just use a ball. What we'll do is we'll use the ball tool to kind of make a little squished kind of shape that we can put inside. Do you know what I mean? To use as a light inside of it, like so. And we can change the size afterwards anyway. So what we're doing is we're trying to get it so it's big enough to fit inside of here, and then we can change it again afterwards. So all we're doing is we're just placing it where we kind of need it to go and the size we need it to go. So let's say that we're happy with that. Then we'll press Y on the keyboard. Let's rotate it so it's kind of in that position, and then it's a matter of moving it, and then you can size it up as well. Let's turn all the layers on, and what we'll do is when we size it up is with the polygons, let's just select a couple of polygons and press the bracket key or selections connected, and then we can size it up again, modify size, and we can size it up to how far you can, how big you want it, and again move it into place so it's kind of right and you're happy with it. So I'll kind of do that now, and again to bring it up and stuff. And so this is what we're kind of going to be using for the actual main kind of light. And again, I can play with this. I need to play with this a little bit more, you know, just to stretch it and shape it into position so it's kind of put in there. So I'll do that now, and then we'll go on to the next bit. In the next step, we're gonna make the top button. Also, just looking at these front three lights on my original, what I did is I beveled them in again, like so, and then I pulled them back slightly, like that. And then what I did is made the outside polys, these ones here. So if I just select a few and go to select loop, I then change them to a different colour. Like I think I made them like a black colour. So let's just do that, and then call them like outer. Just give them a black, like so. And so I did that with all three here. So next, let's have a look at how we do the button at the top. Before doing the top button, let me just change the actual front view. We're going to go to top view, and then in our actual backdrop we want a top. What we're going to do is I'm going to use the actual box tool to draw out a flat plane with some polygons, and then use a drag tool to define this area, very basic area of this. Then I can use the heat shrink to kind of suck it against the original object. So if I just put that in the back, and I'll maximize this screen. Now if you're struggling to see the actual polygons that you're going to add, so for instance if I add the box, just use a box, let me just draw out like so, so roughly around that size. Bring up your numerical N on your keyboard, and then let's add a few more segments. So let's say 5 and 5, like so, just to start with. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just going to drop this tool, press spacebar. They're struggling to see what I'm drawing around. So if you go to edit, backdrop, and then on your top left, there is this brightness and contrast you can play around with. So if you darken it like so, you can see it a bit clearer. And remember, I'm only using it for reference, so we'll leave this here. And then what we'll do is we'll go over to the modify, drag, and then you can drag around, and don't be scared to go all the way in here, and you can drag around like so the outer points. So let's just shut this a minute. So all I'm doing is this, and I'm going to go all the way around the actual outside of the reference of the button. So when you're in this view like this, if you hold Alt, you'll notice my cursor switches to like a thicker crosshair, which lets you drag when you hold your left mouse button. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go all the way around this and line it up, and then we'll go to the next stage. So I've drew around all the top, just moving the outside points, as you can see. So if we go back and maximize over screen, and then what we're going to do is we'll switch to the move tool under modify, and then we're just going to move it up and place it just above, and just to see whereabouts the actual position in it. So I'm just going to put it to about here, as you can see, like that. And now what I'm going to use is a tool called the heat shrink to suck it against the other polygon. So once you've got it into place where you're happy with, so yeah, let's say we're happy with that, so you leave it like this. So in the foreground you've got your main polygons for your buttons, in the background you've got your actual sphere, and it's going to suck it against the actual top. So if we find the heat shrink, so under modify, go to heat shrink, and then if you kind of drag to your right, you'll see it sucks into that object like so. Okay, so once you've sucked it in, press spacebar, and then we just need to thicken it. So Under multiply, thicken. So let's just go on to his like this. So let's have a look. So I'm just looking. So I'm on the thicken tool, and let's just bring it up like so. Now if I bring up the numerical and on your keyboard, it will show you how many segments you're making as well, which we'll stick with that, with 4 segments, and the algorithm is normal. So let's just say that, and we'll press spacebar to say we're okay. So let's just put all the other layers back on, and then you can see the actual top here like so. So with the top, we could subpatch it. So if you press tab on your keyboard, it will smooth it like so, and then you'll get this like that. Okay, so we kind of got the top button there. We can give it a surface name. Q on your keyboard like that. Give it a random colour. And then for the last bit, on my actual, if I just go back to here, you'll notice I've got all these little, in fact, let me just rotate, all these little kind of tiny buttons and stuff. So all I did for that is I just selected, and well, I actually added some more polys to the top here, look. And with these, so you could say these here. So currently, if I just untab it, go to the bottom, make sure you're in Captain Clark. So this is a different subpatch option. Tab it, then select a group of, let's say, the 9 polys here. And I want to make more polys. So while you're under multiply, go over to subdivide, faceted, and then press OK. It does this, like so. And then you can make the decision up of the ones that you want to bring up and stuff. So I think I did more, but let's say, for instance, you just wanted these. You would then go to multi-shift, press N on your keyboard. Now, currently, each individual poly is going to rise on its own. You can group them, but we want them to be separate. So basically, let's just zoom in a little bit and have a look. Oops. So, because they're not grouped, you can bring them up, size them in. So I did it a couple of times. I think once you bring it up, if you right mouse click, it adds another one, like subdivision over top, and another one. And then you can bring up these little kind of like buttons. But you could do it all the way along. I think on the other one I might have done it all the way along. But what you could have then, you could give it a new service name, is you could have a series of little buttons, you know, like a grip on top as well. But you could do it from the front. And again, if you've not got enough polys, remember the actual detail, edit edge, and you can come over here and add some more, do you know what I mean, to the actual section and make more to it. But if we look at the overall model, it's literally about there. There's one thing we've got to do. So on the actual model, if you look here, there's these lines where the joints are. So to do that, if you go to your main actual section here, let's just maximize this a little bit. And where there's a joint, can you see here, what I want you to do is I want you to switch to edges, and I want you to choose the edges for this all the way up to about here. So you see that edge that joins up with that ridge that's coming down, and then do the same at the opposite side, like so. So you've got these two lines, look, in line with this edge. Then under multiply, go to more from the drop down and click edge bevel, and you get this, and you can drag them in. So we're just dragging them in a little bit like this, look, and then press spacebar. And then what I want you to do is I want you to select the new line of polys that makes up, oops, the actual ridge. So I'm going all the way up. Might be helpful if I zoom in a little bit. We're only going up to about here, look. So if you look, I'm not going into that bit there, and I just need those polys there to be sucked in a little bit. So what we do is we'll go to the multi-shift, when the numerical's up, this time press group polys, and you can do it by the numerical here, look, if you want and stuff. But all I want to do is I just want to suck them in a little bit, like so. We're talking 1 mil really. Yep, so you've got that kind of gap, and then drop the section. And so what that does, it gives you that shape all the way around. So if I go back to you can see here, look, how on the original I've gone round wherever these ridges are and done the same thing all the way around. So what you've got to basically do is, again, next one, so this one, you'll go to the actual edge tool, choose the edges all the way up to the top, same on this side, not selecting the bottom one, and you're following the same, exactly the same technique I've just done with the other one. You're just using, once you've selected it, you're using edge bevel to create a very small seam, and you can make it bigger or smaller like this. Drop it. You're going to switch. I mean, you could, let me just see if under selections where it says convert to poly selection, if you click this, look, it drops the section, so you don't have to select it, and it selects it for you. So that's quite a nice little tool to convert to the selection to polys. And then again, you literally go into multi-shift, press the numerical, or what was it? Was it 1 mil we did? Oh no, or minus 1 mil then. Minus 1 millimeter. So you kind of get that again. Drop the selection, and then you've got it, and then you're going to repeat this all the way around for each kind of wherever there's a kind of ridge that sticks down, and then you repeat it on the bottom as well. That was the last thing I did before I went through to start texturing. Let's just, so all I've got to do now is do the ridges all the way around. So what we'll do is we'll jump to the original one here, look, and you can see we have done all the ridges all the way around. So at this stage I'd surfaced everything, got all the ridges, and so if we go through to layout, and here is the actual thermal detonator. So for this, I didn't want to use any external textures, just wanted to do it all inside. So if I shift click on the actual texture for the top, and we go, and let's have a quick look at this. And basically what I've done is I've gone and used a preset. I think I got it from the metal. And so what I did is I came down and found a metal that I wanted to use. It might have been this one, old gold. And what I've done is double clicked it and added it. And then what I did is manipulated the way it kind of looked using these kind of different nodes and stuff without going through it completely. The only thing I did do is, if we look at the original, can you see how harsh these lines are? And you wouldn't really get that, not that sharp. So what I did is, in the node editor, I used a node called Egg Shader, which fakes the smoothness of those sharp edges, look. But when I did it, and it worked okay, if I just unplug this, yeah, you get these the smooth edges and stuff. But what I wanted is I wanted to plug in a turbulence into the bevel just to give it a more rougher look. So basically, wherever this texture's on, into the top, look, it's even on the joints, so you get the turbulence of the fake bevel, you get that as well. And then I repeated it to the bottom, so the top is actually the same as the bottom. I just, because I copied and pasted from the top to the bottom, I then just experimented a little bit, changing it all so it weren't exactly right. I wanted it to look quite grungy and dirty and stuff. And then with the lights here, they've got a glass front, which I've put an luminosity on. But I've also added some lights to it. So what I did is I went and added an N-gun light. So if I go to my lights, here, and added 24 sides, so it was circular, and then I placed them over the front, parenting it to the actual object as well, so it gives it a slight glow. Now you could turn this up really high, you can even add some volumetrics and stuff, but I just wanted it to be a couple of lights on, which was quite low, and I did a very similar thing to the top. I just used the red glass with a slight luminosity glow to it. The middle bit is again a copy of this, but I've just played with the nose to darken it, and then the background, the actual background, is just a blurred image that I found on the, sorry, I found an image, I blurred it, and then I've just added it as a backdrop. So for instance, that's under the environment look, so that's that basically, and I'm actually using that as well, even though it's low. Even though it's blurred, and it's not a HDRI, I'm just using it to light the scene as well. So you can actually do that. It's not as good, but you can see you're going to get this fakeness to it and stuff. But what I'll do, because this tutorial is more about the modelling really, and what I'll do is I'll provide this scene so you can have a look and play and do what you want with it as well. I mean, after I kind of modelled it, I did play around a little bit more, because I just wanted to tweak little bits, but nothing really that would not change the way it's going to come out for you. But like I said, take your time take your time, because I've kind of rushed this to try and get it into 30 minutes, which I've terribly failed. But hopefully you've enjoyed this tutorial and you've learnt a few things. So thanks for listening.